Hi, I'm Susie Morgan, founder and director of training at Precision EMDR Academy. And what I wanted to talk about today is this idea of attachment. There are so many conversations, important conversations we're all having now about how do we treat attachment with EMDR therapy. And in really wanting to help distill that down for people we are training initially in EMDR therapy, but also who are really wanting advanced skills in EMDR therapy, I think it's been really important to find a way to identify where to start. What do we need to know when we are getting started treating a client, so we know what on earth is going on with their attachment system and how does that interweave with the trauma that we need to treat, as well as how is that affecting their functioning, their symptoms, all of that. And so what questions do we ask? So that's what I want to answer today is what are the 6 things that we need to ask about first that really matter in getting the lay of the land of our client's attachment system and their functioning and their attachment history that may be influencing them today. And then also, what do we do with that? What are the next steps? What are the implications of what we find out? So let's start with this idea of what are these 6 dimensions of attachment that I think are really important to ask about. And first, I really suggest asking this about the client's early attachment experiences, their primary caregivers, or anyone else who was a caregiver, maybe who wasn't their direct parent, but really played a significant role in their early life and may have provided these aspects of attachment experiences. And then I really encourage broadening that out, looking at romantic relationships, partner relationships throughout their lifetime, looking at their relationships with their friends and the qualities of attachment in those relationships. And then also, what do they provide and where do they struggle in providing these aspects of attachment to their partners or to their children even? And actually, I learned to ask that question from one of my clients because I was asking her all these things to reflect on about her relationships and how others had provided various things to her. And she's like, wait, I should be looking at myself as well. And I really thanked her for that because it immediately became part of what I do and what I ask. And actually, it's a different client that actually is the source of why I started to want to really conceptualize this in the first place. This client came to me and she had been reading about attachment, really trying to understand herself. And she came to me and said, well, Susie, what attachment style do you think I have? And this is one of those moments where I went into an internal panic. I tried to stay cool on the outside, but I was like, I actually really have no idea. I really didn't have much more than the basics I had learned back in grad school that was at this point years ago, and really didn't have a good answer for her. And so I started to do a deep dive. And then I got in the weeds with it. I was like, oh, these are all really, it's a bunch of terminology. It's different for childhood attachment than adulthood attachment. There's all of these nuances, all of these things. And so how do I translate this into something that is practical and also something that allows me to have meaningful conversations with my clients so I can actually get a sense practically of their experiences and what I need to address in EMDR therapy? So this is what I have distilled it down, and this is the language I use with my clients. So the 6 key dimensions of attachment I believe that we need to look at are primarily things that I learned from Dan Siegel, as many of us have, and then also some bit of addition that I learned along the way, especially in my training with Andrew Leeds with EMDR therapy and complex trauma and attachment. So I'm going to highlight all of that. And with Dan Siegel, he talks about this idea of the goal of secure attachment is to provide a secure base and a launching pad. And so what are the aspects that we need for that? So the first, I believe, which is most foundational, is attunement. This is this idea of what Dan Siegel talks about mindset, that there is a sense of the caregiver really trying to imagine what it is like from the perspective of the child, really trying to read the child's cues, verbal, nonverbal, all of those things, and does a reasonable job of doing so. And then corrects it when there is a misattunement. And so it's not about perfection, but it is about calibrating, really trying to make sure that you are getting your child so they feel seen and they feel heard. And then I think next from that, really building on that, but in a different sort of flavor or feel, is that idea of nurture, or Dan Siegel calls this soothing. This is that encouragement. It's the warm fuzzies. It's the hugs. It's the safe place to fall. That sort of quality, that when that characterizes a relationship, it gives this sense of, I have a nest here. I have a place where I am safe to just be me, and sometimes to not be okay. Another key component of that is repair. So when there is a rupture, when there's a rupture in attunement, when there's a rupture in one of these other ways, that parent is really seeking to connect and reconnect and repair what was broken. And then we have predictability. This is this idea of, I can count on you. When I ping, you ping back. I know you're going to be here. And there are sometimes life circumstances that create external just chaos, whether it's poverty or it's an unsafe neighborhood or it's pervasive, just racism that is affecting your family and all of those things, all of these pieces that can create chaos on the outside, which can make this harder. However, if there is just this sense of, I know that I can count on my caregiver to be there when I need them, and there's a sense of order, there's a sense of structure in our lives as much as can be provided, it matters. And it really provides that sense of like, I've got security here, and I can go off and take risks, and I can do that sort of launching pad bit because there's a sense of a reliable place I can come back to and I can lean on. And then we have protection. Protection really matters. And it's not just that I've got your back and I'll go to bat for you with that teacher and all of those things, but also that the caregiver will protect them, will protect the child from themselves, their own anger, their own loss of temper, their own just letting all of their emotions fly in a way that can be harmful to a child. And so there's that protection from self in that caregiver's responsibility to say, I'm going to take care of myself so I can provide a sense of safety for my child. And then I think even more importantly is this idea of, I will act as a protector if the other caregiver is also being unsafe in some way. And when I'm working with complex developmental trauma, I would say that is the most tender piece. There is something that actually is harder and more betrayal level to heal in terms of a non-protective parent than it is oftentimes even the one who did the direct harm. And then we have play. Play is something I think that surprised me as I learned it from Andrew Leeds. And this is this idea of this shared positive affect, this sort of letting go. And it incorporates that attunement, but it also incorporates just allowing there to be this safety to just engage and laugh and be together. And it makes a big difference also in that sense of that attachment system feeling secure. And a final one is wisdom. It's guidance. It's this sense of, I'm going to help you take those next steps. I'm going to guide you in that sense of, this is what you need to do in order to handle this situation at work. This is what you need to do in order to handle situation at school before work. You're even old enough for work. This is what you need in order to manage that really mean friend that you're dealing with. So all of those pieces make a difference in creating a sense of a secure attachment. And that is, I think, the most important information that we can gather, along with what are those things that have happened to our client. We need to be gathering that sense of, What have they had in terms of that sense of a secure base? What has developed out their nervous system sense of resiliency? And what do we do with this information? So first of all, we are looking for those trauma memories, the harm done, the specific damaging events. And in gathering this information sometimes will allow us to see things that we wouldn't have seen if we were just gathering those big T traumas, those worst life events that stand out to the client. This is where we're going to see those patterns and those subtle areas of damage that they might not even realize are there. In addition, we're going to see important resources. We're going to see that aspect of that client that they're bringing in that's going to allow us to help them get past the stuck spots, because we're going to see they had that nanny or they had that grandma, even though mom and dad, all these things were really difficult. They had these other people who really made a difference and brought something to their experience that we can draw on. And then thirdly, we're going to see blocks. We're going to be able to see before we get there the things that are operating in that client's nervous system, that as we ask about each of these areas and what was provided by each caregiver individually, and they hem and haw around certain things, or they have a hard time really acknowledging that somebody wasn't anything but ideal, or that this other person actually, they've always labeled them as being awful, but actually there were these couple of things that they really showed up for in ways that they needed. We start to see those internal rules, and we're also able to start discussing them, putting them on the table and saying, this is going to be part of our work and it matters. So anyways, I hope that these little bits give you something to think about, give you something to consider. And also I want to invite you, if you are wanting a real structured way to interview for these things, it's part of what we teach. And also it's part of what we teach you how to treat. So if you want to know more, definitely check out our advanced trainings, even our basic training if you're not already trained in EMDR therapy, because we start this process of teaching you how to do these things there. But regardless of whether or not you join us for trainings, engage with me. Please post your comments, post your questions, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this.